right? Thanking God for something we might have low-key alluded to before, but the way in which he, as it's sometimes said today, the way he makes it make sense. Understanding that that's a phrase that typically applies to things that you can't really reconcile or make sense. There are ways in which God can make seemingly nonsensical things make sense. And I think that has at least something to do with what's going on in this chapter, John chapter 16, where in a recent sermon, we pretty much use this as the structure for at least our introduction as Christ in verse 1 is going to begin. I have said all these things to you to keep you from falling away. They will put you out of the synagogues. Indeed, the hour is coming when whoever kills you will think he is offering service to God, as the chapter goes on from there. The purpose statement, understandably, trying to prepare them as he's doing in this extended time with his apostles minus one, the Judas that went to go betray him, Judas Iscariot, not the Judas that is still with the 11. He's using this time to get them ready, as we said, and now this chapter is closing out that time where he is counseling them, helping them to understand that there will be things that don't seem to make sense about the opposition they are about to face. And so he is trying to prepare them for that time when they might be tempted to fall away because the ops are just nonsensical in the things that they are doing. And so understanding that, that's the first section of prep that he is offering them. But he is going to go back to a familiar theme. As we said back in chapters 14, 15, and now 16, he is promising them the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth as a helper. And once again, it might seem redundant that he's calling him the Spirit of truth, but that's his name. And more importantly, in this context, it seems to point to an additional role in the truth that he is telling them, understanding that in previous chapters, he's talking about the way he will guide them into the truth of understanding God's expectations or the law that will give the new command, the command to love. He will make that make sense. But beyond the law, it seems that now in the context of their struggles, the fact that he is leading them into all truth also includes the way that he can make it make sense when the opposition is otherwise nonsensical. Likewise, I just got to make a pause there before I move on. It just seems to preach itself. The application to our lives helps us to understand that as he has promised the Holy Spirit to us as well, one of the advantages to living in a way that motivates God and the Holy Spirit to shed light on our circumstances is the way in which he makes our otherwise nonsensical moments in life make sense. So God willing, we will be encouraged by the role that the Holy Spirit can play in our lives as well, helping our nonsensical difficulties to at least have a little bit more meaning in what we might sometimes call epiphanies, times when we might have mulled it over in our minds over and over until the point at which we might have reached an impasse, at which point an epiphany or a light might come on, helping, even if it doesn't help the problem to go away, it helps it to seem a little more, oh, that's why. Understanding that, he's going to go on and say that, likewise, their problems aren't going to just magically disappear. They are going to experience legitimate sorrow, understanding that he has already brought them into a place of sorrow by telling them that he is going to go away. He's going to say it's going to get worse because when he actually leaves, the way they see him or witness it happen, it's going to make it worse because it's going to be as bad as he said it was. And so in verses 16 through 24, he's going to say the way that their sorrow is going to be very, very real and it's going to get very much worse. However, it's not going to be forever because not only is he going to give them a spirit that they can't see, he is once again going to reinforce that turn in their sorrow as he turns it to joy with his physical presence. Likewise, reminding us in life that there are times where, once again, it's so important not to allow the enemy to define our reality for us, but to allow God to reframe the issue for us so that we can see a broader perspective of life that will actually give us tangible reasons to realize that our disappointments and our sorrows are not forever. And that's what they are going to get here in the presence of the Christ, where they can't even imagine necessarily that. Much like he raised Lazarus from the dead, they are physically going to see him again. And he is, during the time that he spends with them, going to encourage them and get them ready for his departure as he points forward to not only a time when he will turn their sorrows to joy, but he will turn them to a joy that no one will be able to take from them. much like he promised them a level of peace that's similar to what we've seen described as the peace that surpasses understanding. Going on, though, not only is he going to give them a joy that cannot be shaken down the road one day, he is going to speak to them in the last section, verses 25 through the end of the chapter, around about verse 33, in language that is no longer shrouded in figures of speech, leading them to say, oh, now we understand. At which point he is going to say, oh, do you, in verse 31? Do you now believe? No, you don't really, because in verse 32, he's going to say, behold, the hour is coming. When they see it's bad, or when they see how bad it's going to get, they are going to scatter and leave him alone, even though he is going to say he is not alone because the Father is with him. And the thing that might have most stood out to me about this chapter seems to be the way that they are trying so hard to understand what he's saying, even though in reality, they still don't seem to get it, as Christ is not faulting them for it, but he's called out, as we saw in second to last paragraph, as the ESV has it broken out, but in that last section where he says, nah, you don't get how bad it's going to get. But I think he still loves the fact that they're trying hard, understanding that in life, our efforts are never going to be by themselves enough to get us through all the adversity that life has for us, but our efforts still matter. And so in this chapter, where once again Christ is promising them the help of the Holy Spirit, it is the help of the Holy Spirit because the Holy Spirit is not replacing their efforts. And so even though their efforts in this chapter might have been clumsy, it is one of the reasons why, in addition to the presence of the Holy Spirit and the obedience to the counsel that he offers us, grace and mercy play a huge role in the service that we offer to God, because just like his apostles here, oftentimes the things that we try to do for God, to him, they come off as clumsy. And as one passage says, all our righteous deeds before him are as filthy rags. But in spite of all that, we mentioned the role of mercy and likewise grace, because there are times when not only the adversity that surrounds us doesn't seem to make sense, the things that God has called us to do honestly might not seem to make sense. But just as the Holy Spirit was going to help them understand things that they were trying so hard to pretend like they understood, right now, likewise, there are going to be some things that we're going to try really hard to understand, but we still really don't get it. And that same Holy Spirit that eventually guided them to almost seem like, by the time we get to the book of Acts, new men who didn't have the same anxieties that they had in these days of doubt. Likewise, the Holy Spirit, God willing, if we allow God to work in us and transform not only our motives, but our obedience to his counsel and his commands, and God willing, our lives will persuade God to allow his Holy Spirit to make all our struggles and uncertainties make sense.